Hey, all you beautiful Ethic cuties and the 40% of you who have still not subscribed to the Ethicverse, welcome to the coolest place to be every Tuesday at noon Eastern. If you think changing our healthcare workplaces can change our world, I got a real treat for you today. You asked, we answered. We're diving deeper on AI for healthcare. Today's session is called AI Risk to AI Ready. We're going to be talking about tools, tactics, techniques, transformation, all that kind of stuff. So let's get launched with a massive emoji explosion to welcome Nakas and Scott. These guys are freaking geniuses. You guys are going to love them if you don't know them. You'll see their LinkedIn on the console there. Give us all a follow if you love us. We're off to a good start, 100 emojis before we even get started. I love it. If it's your first time joining, or if you have a certification with SHRM, with HRCI, or with the Compliance Certification Board, this is the place to be. You can even double dip and we won't even tell on you. You can get free credits every single week on the Ethicsverse. We have sessions every single Thursday. Our show is every Thursday at noon Eastern. And a couple, 2-3 times a month, we also do these special healthcare sessions on Tuesday. So as we are running through a couple of quick announcements here, I'm going to go fast, I promise. Drop your LinkedIn URL in the chat and connect with at least one person today. You got to keep building that network because your network is your net worth. Neither are big enough. And I'm not kidding about that. Brand new UI finally rolled out on the Ethicsverse, or on the on the Ethico tool. So we have multiple tools that are going to help you drive a culture of integrity, build more engagement with the stakeholders in your organization, drive more efficiency so that you can rest at night knowing that you have an effective program. So there's been some massive enhancements. We have a really cool new dashboard that has some great info right at your fingertips. As pressures have increased, as budgets have been tightened, as we're sort of navigating through this tough macroeconomic environment, the expectations on us have increased, but many of us have not had a commensurate increase in our resources. So it's increasingly more important that we're able to do more with less, drive more efficiency, and drive more impact as we make bets with our time through a risk-based approach. So our UX and UI upgrade is here, and that's really going to help you do that. So I'm going to give you a little video on that. Look at that. Look how that looks. Can you imagine waking up to that every day?
That looks beautiful.
So I love this thing because it's super flexible and it has real-time updates. It looks good, and there's a lot of information on each pane. So I'm always talking about Parkinson's law, and Parkinson's law is that work fills the available time. So it's not like we ever are running out of things to do. It's not like there's not enough fires. It is that we need to make better bets with our time because that time is limited. So when we can have better information at our fingertips, we're more likely to do that. So I'm going to talk about a little package that we still have in play if you're interested in checking out what we got. But if you missed Ethics First Day, all of those are up on the console. All those videos are also up on our YouTube channel, so you should like and subscribe. Go to Official Ethico right now, Official Ethico on YouTube, and subscribe to that channel. You can see all the videos that we put out from our world famous, fastest growing, by the way, podcast in the game, and from all the replays of the Ethicsverse. But if you feel like reading, we have a great ebook here, an Ethicsverse 2.0 white paper that has all the biggest takeaways right there on the console. I think you can download that, and if not, Joe is going to go ahead and drop that in the chat. We're up to 400 emojis. I love it. All right. Also, you got to be following folks. There's a ton of great podcasts out there. We had Tom Fox on from the Two Gurus podcast and myriad other podcasts on the Compliance Podcast Network. Hema Lomax has a great podcast out. Reed Blackman, a friend of the show, he has a great podcast called Ethical Machines. And another one I really want to highlight for you, if you haven't checked it out, is Ross Ronan's Compliance Leadership Lounge. This is he's really brilliant, smart. We're going to be having him back on the show soon. So I encourage you to click this URL here, take a picture of it, and check out the Ethico Library and pick up a book, earn a book today, which I'll talk about here in a second. We're giving away 5, of course. And pick a new podcast to follow. The more you can expose yourself to some of this thought leadership that's out there, the more you kind of stack the deck in your favor and increase the odds that you can drive better impact. We had the one and only Jackie Pruitt on the Ethics Experts, show 225. So she has a great background, ton of great tips, a really cool perspective coming from a previous regulator to then working in compliance to really build a program that drives effectiveness forward and is not just checking boxes. We are giving away some books today. So we're giving away Humanizing Rules from the one and only Christian Hunt. He's another guy to follow. If you don't know him, you should absolutely follow him. His book, Humanizing Rules, is all about taking principles from behavioral science and embedding them in your program to drive more engagement. Again, we need to crowdsource that risk intelligence at scale across the organization, which requires that we're smart with the way that we engage with the stakeholders. So if you don't follow him, definitely should. And if you haven't bought his book yet, boom, you got a chance to win one of the 5 that we're giving away today. Last thing, Ethico, the company that sponsors this, of course, just won Best Ethics and Compliance Software in the World per G2. This is not a pay-to-play site. This is a site that gives these awards out based on feedback from actual verified users. So we became momentum leader, and we just launched a new risk assessment tool. As Tom was saying last Thursday, it's incumbent on us to make good bets with our time, and we need to rethink the way that we do our job. So when we can get better intelligence about current risks that are going on in the organization, get some of those kinds of snapshots in real time, we're able to reassess, replan, redeploy the resources that we have in the most meaningful and effective way. So we've been talking a lot about DOJ guidance. We've been talking a lot about driving effective programs forward. So we've put together a package exclusive for EthicsVerse members, people who have attended the EthicsVerse. The DOJ defense package is 25% off. You can see what's included here. I'll go ahead and pop this up a couple of times during the show here. All right, with that out of the way, let's get one more round of applause, one more massive emoji explosion for the one and only Nakas and the one and only Scott. How you guys doing today?
Hey, Scott, doing great.
Great, glad to be here.
So you know what's nice about us is that even in space, we look so clean. Even in outer space, even in our spaceship, we're looking clean. How's it going, Scott? Good to see you, man.
Hey, Nick, how you doing?
Good. Okay, so today we're talking about this sort of AI imperative in healthcare and this sort of crossroads that compliance is at. So I want to get started with this question. Why is this AI's rapid adoption in healthcare a critical concern for compliance and risk professionals right now? What is it about this that you see people getting right, and what is it about it you see people getting wrong?
Yeah,
let's start with you, Nakas.
Okay. Yeah, no, and Nick, before I start, it's really great to be back on talking with you on your platform. It's amazing what you're doing and how you're pushing compliance in the industry forward. And, we were just talking before we got on the show about how we were on the Ethics Expert talking about AI a couple of years ago, and it's just evolved so much, and I really appreciate the opportunity. My whole career has been in healthcare, and, one of the reasons I'm in healthcare is because we impact people's lives directly. And so now when we're talking about AI and humans, we're talking about influencing and impacting people's health at mass scale. And so that's why we need to do it responsibly, ethically, safely. And that's why, how many different roles are there in the organization that holistically have a view and a pulse on the organization and their offerings? And it's really a compliance officer. And so one of my theses in, the responsible AI governance field is compliance officers need to get involved, and they need to get more involved because we have those holistic views. We're involved in the company's movements. We need to find the willpower and the energy, even though we're very busy, to make sure that there's components of AI governance and safety in place so that we can give quality care to our patients, make sure that nothing goes wrong. Without so much direct regulation right now in AI, it's up to people like us and organizations to responsibly and ethically make sure that we deploy this AI to our patients. And so that's why it can go really wrong. We can talk about a lot of examples. But in general, we kind of know some things have already gone wrong and some things will go wrong because without regulation, we're really pushing for commercialization, and we're going to have some test cases that are going to go awry. And so it's up to us to make sure it's done responsibly.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, we don't have that security blanket that regulation can provide in other areas of risk within our organization because this technology is so nascent. It's so, new. What would you add to that, Scott?
Well, I think along those points, we don't have the regulation yet that's specific to AI on a national level, but there are a whole bunch of regulations that absolutely impact how we're using AI. AI fundamentally is a tool that we use, and it's not coming to healthcare, it's here. Back in April, there was a survey, 95% of healthcare executives said this is going to change healthcare fundamentally. That same survey, I believe, had 30% of doctors had already moved AI automated scribing out of testing or trialing and into actual production. Another 60% were using it. That's 90% of providers were using it. Compliance has moved continually over the last number of years towards a more risk-based approach where we're looking at the risk for the organization. And fundamentally, this is something we need to deal with. It is a risk. It is here. And you need to understand it and put structures in that deal with, assess that risk and look to mitigate the places where it can really burn you.
So we need to get away from this sort of reactive mode with this. We just it's not the time to kind of be reactive. So I want to talk a little bit about how a proactive approach to AI compliance is going to help us really be a business enabler and really help our organizations innovate safely. Where should somebody kind of get started with that? Let's start with you, Scott, and then we'll go back to Nakas.
Sure. I mean, again, it's like everything else that we deal with in compliance. It starts with where could the impact be? What are the risk profiles? How are you using it? Do you have structures in place to use it intentionally rather than just finding out it's being used? Again, it's that being proactive. It's putting the structures in place that give a pathway. Water finds a way, life finds a way. You've got to have a structure in place so that people that want to use it, and huge portions of every organization are going to want to, know what they can do to deploy it safely and intentionally and not as a lone wolf, so that everyone in the organization understands that, if it's an operational person, they've got support from IT, they've got support from compliance, they have support from HR and from staffing and everything else. This can't be a lone wolf. This can't just drop in IT. It can't just be some doctors or some executive's pet project. It has to be an intentional organizational approach.
I think that's right, Scott. And it starts with kind of getting a picture of how it's being used in the various stakeholder groups or departments inside the organization. And there's probably not going to be a silver bullet with this, because as soon as we get some data, it's going to kind of get a little bit stale, right? Like there's so many new use cases coming out. This thing is moving so fast, and the applications of it are kind of beyond what any of us even thought 2 years ago. Well, probably not you, Nakas, 2 years ago when we had that podcast together, but definitely beyond what I thought, at least as quickly as, this has happened. We have some people who have been using our risk assessment tool, and this is not like an ad by any means, but they've been using the risk assessment tool to do bite-sized AI risk assessments where they have 5 or 10 questions tied to AI use and sending it out to like different department leaders just to kind of kick off that process, just like Scott was saying. If you don't have a tool, you can do that with Google Forms. You can even AI some basic questions and put that in Google Forms or Teams Forms, whatever you have. But I think to Scott's point, we have to be proactive. We have to kind of jump in the pool and start getting a picture of its use right now before we can start to even ascertain the impact or the risks that might be presented to our organization by its use. What would you say to that, Nakas?
Just piggybacking off what you're saying, Nick, I believe, yes, the risk assessment, capturing components of AI risk is very relevant in all organizations right now, because it's a board topic right now. And so you want to capture those risks relevant to your organization and industry in some type of tool or whatever, way you're housing this type of information, and then flow it up throughout the organization and make sure you're taking actions to mitigate those. If you want to take a step back, I think it comes down to really fundamentally, how much decision-making authority are we going to give AI? Personally, and inside our companies as well in our industry. And in healthcare, we still have rules. Texas just came out with the AI bill, the fourth state in the US to come out with one. And they had a section on healthcare. And it said that healthcare professionals still need to make the final decision in any AI-assisted diagnosis or treatment. So they're saying that clinicians still need to make the final medical decision and input that information in medical records. And also on the same level, we also need to start thinking about how much we're depending on AI. I'm using ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot even more than Google now. And a lot of people are. And so we still need to remember where these sources of data are coming from and how we're using it. And Nick, to your original question, where do we get started? We already have some structures in place, whether there's a compliance committee or different types of organizational groups talking about business development, where if you can use one of those forums to get insights into what's coming down the pipeline in terms of AI usage, whether it's new AI vendors, or honestly, all your vendors, all your third parties, a lot of them are becoming AI infused. And so we're touching on some different topics here, such as third-party risk management, where the party that you onboarded 3 years ago, would say a VP of some business area, they're doing some things and now they're all AI infused. Are you now tracking, all their new offerings that with technology and AI? And do you have some more, real-time monitoring and tools to make sure that they're not going awry inside your organization and with your clients and patients? And so, I think, Nick, we can also get into AI governance, but really, having a grasp holistically on the inventory of where AI is being used and how you have that process to deploy it responsibly inside your organization.
Remember those old pictures or those old movies of like somebody in the Dust Bowl and like they're always sweeping out their, wood planked house? It's like, that's what AI is going to be. You got to sweep that house every single day because that dust is going to make its way in. And there's tremendous pressure at a board level. There's tremendous sort of like implicit pressure on leadership, on CEOs to drive more margin inside their organization by leveraging AI. I mean, there's tons of articles I've seen over the last couple of months in the Wall Street Journal and other publications like that of, CEOs getting up there and sort of bragging that they added 10 points of EBITDA to their business by automating more and leveraging AI. That is that kind of, that's that sort of implicit pressure that's going to drive and open up these floodgates. To your point, Nakas, I think it's incumbent on us not only to see kind of what's coming, but to make sure that like there's clear lines on the road so that the application of or the use of AI in the operation of our business doesn't create undue risks on the one hand, and also on the other hand, that we can sort of preserve and maybe even enhance our brand at a time where there's a lot of change going on by being a business enabler. The worst thing we can do is just say, okay, you know what, this thing is too scary. It's moving too fast. We're going to have like a no AI policy. I think we talked recently on one of our shows that like AI is kind of like retaliation. Like just because you write an anti-retaliation policy and a zero tolerance for retaliation policy doesn't mean that there's no retaliation going on in your organization. And like Scott said, water finds a way. People are going to find a way to use technology or use tools to make their lives easier. So if a tool is locked out, I can guarantee, go back to that KPMG report that recently came out. I guarantee more than half of folks are using it on some unapproved laptop, on their phone, or something else. So again, it's on us to understand what's out there, and it's on us to take this sort of risk-based approach to like mitigating these risks. Okay, I will get off my soapbox briefly to kind of pivot into kind of this AI literacy for compliance leaders segment. So I want to talk a little bit about like what AI is and what it isn't, and kind of start to try to distinguish some of the hype from these practical tools. There's so much stuff coming out on your Twitter feed, on your Instagram feed, I'm sure, talking about AI, if yours looks anything like mine do. But how do you think we can start to kind of distinguish? I'm going to start with you on this one, Scott, and then we'll go to you, Nakas. How do we kind of distinguish between the hype of AI and its practical applications, particularly in the context of healthcare compliance?
I'm sorry, if that was to me, I just lost audio for a second.
All right, so I'll go to Nakas and then I'll come back to you. The question is, how do we kind of sort through the hype versus the practical applications of AI in the context of healthcare compliance, and how do we prevent that from like paralyzing us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a couple of years ago when I've been talking about this topic, kind of a lot of people probably had their head in the sand on this topic. But, now is front and center in all organizations. And this is time for us to step up. And it's, regardless of what's really AI versus, machine learning, and some is, still some more basic, types of technology, we need to have a grasp on it holistically through some type of governing mechanisms. So we need to understand the broad impact of the types of tools that we're enabling with AI, whether it's a vendor that's coming in or, it could be a medical device with AI capability. We need to, understand the full risk of what's happening here and what could happen. And that requires, knowing your business and then connecting the dots on what real risks are, and also not doing it by yourself. You need to have a group of SMEs, subject matter experts, whether it's, counterparts from your legal team, your privacy, your tech team, your operational team, your clinical team. You got to have the right stakeholders involved so you can have these types of dialogues. Ideally, before you onboard, you have a discussion on the use case, you identify risk, you identify the ROI, so that you as an organization, based on your risk tolerance, can onboard these vendors appropriately. There's tools also for third-party risk management where you can have these vendors attest or demonstrate that they have the right levels of security and policies in place. And so I think those are good ways to get started. Nick, you did mention something about AI policy that I want to touch on. I've joined a new organization, and we're actually looking into an AI policy, development. And I believe, just following some of the trends, organizations can take, one of two routes typically. One is, hey, don't use anything outside of our ecosystem. So say, you have Microsoft, and we want to use the Microsoft enterprise. Don't put any data or ask any questions during the workday in any other AI tools that are not authorized by us or, vendors in our ecosystem. But I think what people have noticed and companies have noticed is people are going to use the tools that they like. There are other capabilities better than whatever's offered from just one vendor or one type of system. And so a more agile approach that, kind of meets the modern workforce is really more of a educational, agile, and more of a guardrails approach. We're like, hey, don't put confidential information or patient privacy in tools that are not in our ecosystem, And, you give them the guardrails, you trust them, and you educate. And that's where the AI literacy comes into place.
I mean, ideally, everyone's policy could be everyone's policy book could just be 2 words: be smart. Obviously, that's not going to work. But I think the closer we can get to principle-based application of a kind of an AI policy, and the further we, by its nature, if we pivot toward really trying to be principle-based in it, it then removes the need for us to articulate every single possible sort of use case. And in doing that, I think many times it kind of dumbs it down for the user. The stakeholders in our organization are not stupid. They all have, a 4-pound nuclear reactor between their ears. And so when we can tell them what we're concerned about from a principle perspective, when we can give them a list of principles like some of those you just mentioned, it gives us a lot more sort of fluidity and a lot more ability to be a business enabler, because again, that dust is going to make its way into the house. This AI usage is absolutely going to happen, as you said. So Scott is working on a couple of tech issues right now, all good. I want to talk a little bit about kind of some of the fundamental differences just from a edification perspective. How do you like that? That's my
Absolutely.
$7 word of the day. What do you
All
think
right.
some of the fundamental differences are between sort of artificial general intelligence that we see maybe coming down the pike and sort of the narrow AI tools we see in healthcare today? And what is like, in what are the risks at these like different ends of the spectrum that like we as compliance folks need to kind of be tuned into, at least at a high level, as we hear more and more of these terms and more of these tools sort of make their way into the day-to-day work?
Yeah, Nick, I think we have to really stay in tune with what's happening in the industry and in our own organizations. When I worked at a health tech company, we had armies of engineers, product managers, data scientists, and instead of just saying, hey, I know compliance and I know the rules, I'm going to tell them what to do. You got to really align first with this organization, with your tech leaders, to understand how to talk to them on their terms and what's happening with the technology today. And so that requires first and fundamentally us educating ourselves, opening up ourselves to understand what these different types of technologies can do and what the risks are, and mitigating those risks, and also using them for our benefits to increase productivity. Because it's an arms race right now with productivity. All the tech companies are pushing for it. We're even pushing for it, and it's an opportunity to not only make your employees more engaged and productive, but also just upskill your teams to do more enhanced things. And so in terms of understanding, it's every tool has its own capabilities. There's AI agents, they do certain workflows. Are they doing things that are outside the bounds of what they're supposed to do in terms of their output? Are you using certain narrow types of AI technologies? So can you control the inputs and the outputs and monitor it so that you can make sure that you're using that responsibly? Then, Nick, what you're getting to is happening very soon and in the future. This more general artificial intelligence that's more human-like. And I was just thinking about this, Nick. Think about this. Companies are now starting to, document all the notes on who's speaking during meetings, right? And then they're seeing your emails and all sorts of stuff. So it's not far-fetched in the future. Maybe we'll even have avatars of ourselves in the workforce. And so we have to think about, these types of potential capabilities in the future, interacting with robots also, and just making sure that we still understand that, we're responsible. It's not like the AI is responsible. We're still responsible for the decisions that we do and the company does, and take it from that principle-based level and then go from there and understanding what these potential risks are, how misinformation can be handled, and how we should deal with it. And use it as a tool, a supplemental tool, but not something that completely replaces our full decision making.
So I think that's absolutely spot on. And I have a kind of a crude analogy here, but like when the internet first came out, think about the use case of AOL Instant Messenger. That was super sort of contained, right? That's just like a little chat bot that you could talk to somebody on the other side of the country or the other side of the world. Compare that sort of singular narrow focus of the internet's sort of potential on the one hand versus like the way the internet is used today for the show, there's thousands of ways the internet is used right now. That's several orders of magnitude more complexity in the latter versus the former. And I think the narrow use of AI, again, is sort of a corollary to that, like instant messenger. And think about several orders of magnitude more complexity risk that comes in with the like adoption of agentic AI, which is essentially making decisions. We have to think about, of course, the human in the loop. At what level can we have enough oversight to where we would be comfortable with the risks of the decisions that are coming out of that agentic tool, but that's going to be here before we know it. The proliferation of agentic AI is going to drive a lot more potential risk to our organization, and we're going to be a little bit hamstrung if we're not at least sort of comfortable with these terms and comfortable kind of thinking about how that scope may have expanded, or how that new dimensionality or how that new sort of added dimensions of risk can really make our jobs a little bit more difficult. I want to pivot now into kind of some use cases in compliance, whether that's document review, hotline analytics, policy drafting. Like, what do you think are some immediate practical ways that AI can be applied? And then I have a great question from Christine. Christine, thanks for that question that I want to tag onto this. So what are some immediate practical AI use cases for healthcare compliance today?
Yeah, well, first of all, don't start from scratch with anything anymore. And so I kind of test run either policy development, or even, if I need to share some guidance, I might pressure test that with, LLM tool, like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, to make sure I'm on point. Am I missing any data points? Any type of other rules out there that was not on my radar? And so first and foremost, you can use it kind of as a assistant to help you develop different types of documents, and also in your decision making to rely on something that can pull information really quickly and do some research for you. Next, you want to start getting more interactive and automating some things. What about a chat bot that is in your ecosystem? Maybe that's based off all your policies, maybe even broader than your policies. It has access to relevant employees' emails and folders of data and documents. And so this chatbot can then now automate a lot of the basic questions so that you can deal with the more strategic or ethical issues that are occurring in your organization. Also, Nick, we really have to focus and double down on this fraud. Okay, so like, we could talk about deep fakes and all sorts of stuff. Sam Altman mentioned, voice authentication and replicating that with fraud, deep fakes with videos. There's that example of the Hong Kong banker last year that authorized $25 million of funds being dispersed because he thought he had employees on teams telling him to do that. And so, AI, just like other, innovative tools, can be used for good or bad. And so fraudsters are using these tools, and we ourselves need to figure out and, keep using tools to monitor these types of risks. And you have to fight AI with AI. And so, in healthcare is always, don't be an outlier unless you're amazing and you can back it up. And so, these fraudsters are now figuring out ways to, be less of an anomaly and keep doing different levels of fraud. And so we have to get more sophisticated as well. And so I think, those are a couple of things I can share right now about, thinking about that topic.
Yeah, that's smart. Scott, are you there? Come in, Manila.
I am, and being the one who has a technical issues going on, let me push back a little bit about Nakas's enthusiasm for where we're going tech-wise. I think he's absolutely right that these are things that we need to be aware of and be thinking about. But again, it goes back to how are we using tools and understanding it. When you talk about agentic agents, Nick, you're talking about multi-step processes, but it all relies on data pools. And there's going to be a difference when you're talking about a chatbot. Air Canada got in a lot of trouble by using a chatbot on its site, because these bots, if they're generic, depending on what they're trained to do, are designed to synthesize what a human would sound like, not necessarily to be accurate. They are typically accurate, but that's no guarantee. And we're going to see later this week, based on the rumor mill, ChatGPT 5 come out. It claims, again, rumor mill, that it has a second LLM in it that will check the first LLM for accuracy. We'll see whether it works. But again, what it's checking is not this understanding that a human would have of knowledge. It's checking based on what its pool of data was trained on or it can source. To Nakas's earlier point about looking at your internal documents, your emails, your documents, that's where it's going to be real important to understand how it draws, because you want it to be pulling off of your actual policies, not what it thinks the policy should be. And we haven't gotten to the point yet that it can do it reliably, consistently, and really take the human out of the loop. It's getting there. It's getting a lot better, but it's a concern. From a compliance risk perspective, it's important that you understand how it works, so you can put the controls in place to make sure that, 90% accuracy may be good in a lot of areas. In healthcare, that gets you sued. So we got to be really careful about those type of things, and especially in compliance or HR, where we're talking about things like bias and discrimination causing major litigation and risk. We got to be real careful. We have to be aware of it. We have to understand how it's going to work. We have to use it, but we have to be careful about how we're using it. And
yeah, that's a great point, Scott. And that kind of corresponds to this comment Lance just made. He said, my biggest concern about AI is the old adage since the first computers, garbage in, garbage out. Early returns on Gemini, when it gave back results as a Black woman when asking about a picture of the Pope makes me wonder if we can truly rely on AI. And I think we're not at the point, especially depending on like our ability to actually prompt in a smart way. I mean, there are very elaborate prompts you can do to like help kind of mitigate some of those false positive kind of like risks that come from the outputs. But until that those controls are kind of built into just sort of basic prompting, we always have to, again, back to the AI bill from Texas. Like at the end of the day, whatever you're turning in is on you. You can't sort of point to, oh, AI did this. Just like that lawyer who lost his license a couple of years ago or whatever, he couldn't point to AI and say, oh, I'm not culpable here because I relied on this thing. Whatever you're turning in is your work. Whatever your organization is generating is your organization's work and what you might be held, accountable for and be held, liable for. I have a couple of other questions in the chat I want to talk about now as we're talking about kind of like AI application. The first one is from Christine Cunningham. Christine, thanks for this question. She said, I want to use AI to build a compliance dashboard to help track the value of pharmacy compliance specifically. What are some of the data points to visualize? Any ideas on that, Nakas or Scott?
Yeah,
also, if you have
Jones.
answers, folks, go ahead and drop those in the chat as well, and we can kind of crowdsource this question. It's a great question.
Yeah, Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, I think fundamentally the points you want to use are the same points you would use without AI.
Exactly.
The advantage of AI is being able to pull it together and display it in ways that can be not have thought of, or can be dynamic or look for. I mean, AI is incredibly good at pattern matching. That's how it works. So being able to track for outlier, I mean, that's the case we've been using in data privacy for years and years, is using AI to track anomalies. So being able to, get more discrete data is key. But what's fundamental for any particular strain is what you already have, what the data is there for it to pull.
Yeah, I think that's right. If we can sort of, if you have a data table that you would need to aggregate for this dashboard, go ahead and use that same one, and you can update that probably more quickly, and you can even have it build you a spreadsheet depending on which tool that you're using that's based on this sort of data table, and you can update that consistently. So I think that's exactly right. In many cases, what we're going to see here is that the same inputs are just able to drive sort of faster outputs by taking sort of a human out of it or taking some of that manual work out of it. But those same building blocks, to Scott's point, are going to be what determine, back to Lance's comment, they're going to be determining what that output is.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
It's not going to do any magic, right? And so you need to be able to already be capturing the relevant data points, whether it's medication adherence or your opioid usage or various types of metrics you're capturing. And what AI is going to do is open, the opportunity for you to leverage more insights or get the data more quickly or more robustly. But that requires you also, as say the practitioner, using the AI to guide the AI essentially through prompting. And when we talk about AI literacy, we have to educate our whole workforce, including ourselves, on some of these terms and how to use it. The more specific, the better and clearer you can get with prompting, the better results you're actually going to get with AI. And so, there's these points about, AI is not very accurate or it gives you this general information, but it's also because you're not using it properly or as effectively through prompting. And so, if you start to have more, specific use cases, and I want more insights, I want to forecast 3 years from now based on our demographics, these types of things, and you start to get that type of data and you start to share with your organization, guess what? Just like Nick's been talking about, you go from general compliance into someone very focused on quality, taking it to the next level, and a business enabler. And, you're making things happen and making the operations move quicker strategically. And so that's a big value add that we can bring to the table.
So if
to that
prompt
point,
engine,
if you're
please go ahead. Yeah, go.
I said just quickly, if you're expecting AI to be magic, it's going to be creating data. Nakas is absolutely right. Understanding how prompts work and how to limit what it's pulling from to data you actually have and can see and validate is essential, because you don't want to be delivering a report to your board or your leadership where you can't back up the numbers it's found.
I think that's spot on. Tina just had a hey, Tina. Great to see you here. The one and only Tina Tolliver is here. As CEOs, we need to develop our prompts in a very specific context. I love AI and what I can accomplish hourly. It's making me smarter by fine-tuning my prompts without going down rabbit holes. I love that. I'm about to drop into the chat right now. This is a great little hack, and this is why people love the Ethicsverse, I hope. I'm dropping into the chat here a white paper that Google put out. It's a 68-page prompting guide. And so what you can do if you don't feel like you're good at prompting, what you can do is you can build a GPT, or you can build a project in Anthropic, or you can build a gem in Gemini, if those are the tools that you use, a prompting tool, a prompting GPT, and you can load that. You can load this, download the document, load it up in there, and say, the instructions for that GPT is to say, I want to be able to put in sort of a natural language prompt, and I need you to use this document to generate a comprehensive prompt, a long comprehensive prompt. Ask me for additional questions for clarity, and then use that prompting guide or use that prompting tool that you just built in freaking 5 minutes, by the way. Use that. Use the output from that as your prompt in your other tool for your other project. We don't have to become experts with things. We just have to know kind of how to, you don't even have to be an expert at riding a horse. We just have to kind of know what a horse is at this point. And you can leverage AI to fill in the gaps without having to even read the 68-page document. But whatever you can do,
I need to jump on that, Nick.
I'm sorry, let me just add this. I have a friend who has, effectively eliminated hallucinations in this prompt that he built. So he has a base prompt and he uploads documents along with whatever, project he's working on. And he specifies in the prompt to say, don't make up any data. Stop immediately if you don't have the answer in these documents. And in that, he's really increased his confidence interval that there's not hallucinations coming out of this thing. So listen, there's risks in everything, right? Like we just have to put guardrails around it in our own use, in our company's use, to make sure that like we're not relying on something that's going to kind of come back and bite us. Go ahead, man.
No, I just said I need to jump on that, Nick. Just little quirks, little quips.
Yeah, I mean, have the AI put it in a language so that you can better communicate with AI. It's a very easy hack.
I can give an example too. If people think about it in healthcare, so say you do have, data scientists and some engineers that are developing some type of technology, and we're talking about the data, you got to have that clean data. And we know in healthcare, we don't have a lot of clean data all the time. There's just, fundamental issues still in our healthcare system with the demographic data and accessing that data. And guess what? We learned at the health tech company that I was at, that you can't use, data from, say, populations in urban areas, use that data, and then go to rural areas and expect the same health outcomes. They're not the same demographics. And so if you have biases and errors in your data, then guess what? The AI is just going to amplify the output at scale.
That's right.
And so, some ways to counteract that is to actually create synthetic data, get some type of data that actually matches against that data so that you can counteract these bias issues.
That's a great point. So kind of on this tip, before we move to the next segment, and this is kind of in line with something that Tina just alluded to in that comment I read, but like beyond efficiency, how can AI transform our role from just, reactive problem solvers to like strategic enablers?
Yeah. I think that there was, I'll be more general about this, but there's now use cases where, we can be more holistic, strategic thinkers in our organization by bringing up not just, I've always said this, compliance officers not only can mitigate risk, identify and mitigate risk, and make operations more effective through, processes, but because we know where the regulations are going, we know where the market is going, we can actually identify and bring opportunities to Nick and, Scott. And so, this is now the opportunity where we have a pulse on our organizations. We know where healthcare is going from the government standpoint. We understand what the markets are doing as well. And so now we can take it to the next level using AI to kind of help, bounce ideas from the regulatory standpoint, from the billing standpoint, to the operational standpoint, to actually, present, potentially even business cases, use cases to our organization in a more, compliant and ethical manner, so that, we can be more responsible and sustainable long term.
What would you add to that, Scott?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, I've always talked about compliance officers. We're not the cops. We're the Sherpas. We're the guides. I would emphasize that guiding aspect is bringing everyone together. You don't want to put compliance at the center of making that business case. You want to be that resource that whenever anyone's doing any business case, whether they involve AI or not, they're looping compliance in. Because it's not just the regulations. It's our ability as one of the few groups in any organization that have that holistic look at the entire organization. And being able to maintain that credibility means that we have to know what we're talking about. And therefore, we need to know about AI. We need to understand what the risks it presents and the capabilities.
I think that's right, Scott. And I think there's maybe two principles that we can, to answer my own question here. I think there's kind of two principles that we can think about. One is, how can we spend more of our time putting our unique gifts to work, our unique perspective, our unique tool set to work in the context of adding value to our business? There's a bunch of things that we do that we spend time on, building PowerPoints, making outlines, right? Like there's a ton of things that we do that we can automate or that we can get some leverage. The more of that sort of like non quote unquote value add time that we can sort of push off of our plate, presumably the more of our time we can spend with putting this unique sort of skill set to work for our business. So that's one sort of selfish one. And then the other principle I think to keep in mind is that strategic business enabler, our ability to be a quote unquote Sherpa in the organization, all that is in the eye of the beholder. And so it comes down to how we show up to our counterparts in the organization and how we're able to add value and how we're able to kind of OCRM it, objective centered risk management, our role in our communication to tie what we're doing into the things that like the organization cares most about, or that leadership cares most about, whether it's in the quarter or the year or the decade that we're talking about. I think to Nakas's earlier point, we have to know the business first and foremost. And second of all, I think we have to show up as smart business people if we're ever going to ascend to that brand of strategic enabler, and we're able to shed this sort of old moniker of office of slow, office of no, business stopper. There's a whole list of these these caricatures, these sort of derogatory characterizations that like many of us have inherited or many of us have sort of stepped into. So I think we need to keep in mind that like the world is ours. It's ours. It's the steering wheel of our lives and our careers are ours to grab hold of, and we can show up differently. We can show up in a different way. We don't have to sort of carry forward the status quo, perception to our organization. There's tons, especially with this proliferation of AI. There's tons of opportunities for us to add our value as more of these things are adopted. But the old way is not going to get us to where we're trying to go. Okay. Anything to add to that?
Nick, I really love what you just said. Just very quickly, maybe compliance may sometimes say, "Hey, why we were not at the table?" But, you gotta bring value to the table too. And so I really believe, we have to go from beyond just the black and white. And here's the rule, and this is what you can do, and no, you can't do it. They're like, how can you do it? And here's ideas. And, idea generation, being that guide, being that resource, being strategic. We're seeing everything in the organization. We know the high level risk. How do we, fit it into the regulations under the government and where they're going, where the market is going, where our company wants to go, including with our risk tolerance, and make things happen at the end of the day. That's what it's really about, is just making things happen. And I believe compliance officers can really be great, business enablers and business leaders as well.
A lot of us, haven't had jobs where we're spending 60, 70 hours a week living in Excel. Maybe data analytics is not like our strong suit. Well, guess what? Risk mitigation is our strong suit. Recognizing risks and seeing how risks and, trends that are maybe in place are intersecting with, objectives of the organization. That is our strong suit. So, just hotline analytics have become so much easier now when you can take your data set and say, help me summarize this with trends across locations or by category type or by severity. And that's going to give you at least a starting point for your own sort of assessment of that output. Obviously, whatever you're submitting, whatever you're presenting to the audit committee or to the board, whatever, that's going to be on you at the end of the day. And of course, we want to validate, the garbage in, garbage out thing. I can't sort of say that enough, but many times that can get us started on getting takeaways from data that it's easy to get sort of lost in, sort of drowning in these sort of like lakes of data. I think document review is another easy one. I think presentation creation or outline creation, particularly if you've built a custom GPT or a custom project in Claude or a custom gem where you've uploaded perhaps your policies, uploaded the regulations that are specifically specifically apply to your business. That can give you some guidance and help you kind of fast forward. And many times, when we can leverage AI as a good brainstorming partner, it can help us think of things that maybe aren't top of mind, that we can put our own spin on it. Remember, like Gordon Ramsay is not necessarily chopping all those onions, but he is checking the plate before it goes out to the patron, and he is making sure it's wiped down and making sure that like that steak or whatever is cooked properly. Knowing him, of course, it probably isn't if he didn't do it. But we can play that similar kind of a role and not get caught up in, you know, the tears that are coming from chopping the onions, but we can spend more of our time making sure that like the dish is cooked right and that it's presented appropriately.
It's
all
not
right, I want
just
to pivot.
cooking the dish.
Yeah, please, Scott, please.
It's not just cooking the dish. It's making sure that the entire kitchen is set up so that every cook along the line can do their portion. So again, it's thinking proactively. It's setting up. You know, you want to upload your policies. Great. Do you have a secured enclave to put them in so that your Gen AI model, whichever one you're using, can look at them, but still they can be protected? Can you put your confidential business IP or patient data in a place where you can utilize it without running into privacy and data issues?
I think that's right. That's a good point. You know, can you tell I'm hungry? We keep talking about kitchens and food here, okay? So I want to kind of pivot now into kind of ethical concerns, because this is something that seems to come up. You know, we've been doing a lot of these AI sessions. You guys have been asking for them. We've continued to try to do them, and we continue to try to kind of dive deep and not just have these sort of surface level discussions. But a concern that seems to come up in the chat in all these sessions is about bias, about black box algorithms, about hallucinations. And we touched on some of those things a little bit earlier, but I want to kind of start talking about like, what are some of the primary ethical concerns that we have to address, particularly in healthcare regarding bias? You know, Nakas, you talked a little bit about data sets in a, you know, with one group, one demographic group might not be sort of indicative of the type of outcomes we might see in a rural setting. I can't say that word, or something like that. What should we be thinking about with respect to ethical concerns, and how can we better sort of voice those ethical concerns to other folks in the organization that want to leverage this technology to drive more efficiency in their departments without being that sort of business stopper, or, you know, the opposite of a strategic enabler?
Yeah, no, Nick, you know, pretty quickly, and if we have 1 minute or 2 minutes, I'd love to talk about AI governance too, with some practical tips for the audience. But, you know, ethical concerns are the ones we already know exist. You know, some of these already come from regulations that are already on the books. So definitely bias, privacy, you know, you're thinking about intellectual property, and you're also thinking about safety and quality. You know, just because you got this new shiny tool doesn't mean that you have to just pilot it very quickly. And guess what? It goes wrong for some of your patients, and now, you know, you're on the news, you know? And so, like, yeah, that's not what you want to do. And so you really have to think these things through. I believe structure, a process, say, you know, an AI governance committee or structure in your organization that assesses these things from the beginning to the end of launch, to then also monitoring, is how we can counteract some of these ethical concerns. And also having that think tank, you know, so like, we are coming at it from a compliance angle, you know, there's other stakeholders involved, and we want to get them all involved, you know, including, say, clinicians and also privacy and legal, to make sure that we are addressing these ethical concerns. And, you know, not only can we just address them, but Nick, you can turn this into a competitive advantage, because companies and people want to use partners and tools and services that they trust. And so, you know, that's really my thesis at the end of the day, is the trust building factor and turning this into a competitive advantage.
So let's pivot into AI governance. See, you know, this conversation has just been so rich, and you know, we've just been kind of meandering a little bit here. I want to kind of jump to this AI governance question of like, who owns the AI risk? And Nakas, you came up with this really cool kind of 5 steps to AI governance framework that I think our audience is going to really love to hear and learn some more about, because I think it's very implementable regardless of where you're at on the AI maturity adoption curve.
Yeah, I'm going to go through this really quick, Nick. And it's funny, even when I do presentations about AI and AI governance, I always get like just a little bit of time at the very end just to talk about it. So it just naturally happens. But honestly, some of these things are going to sound familiar to you as compliance professionals. And so number one, you got to identify what's going on and identify a leader. So start with the AI inventory. Where's all the AI being used today? If you don't know that, how are you going to manage that risk? And so, you know, you go from the inventory to creating an AI strategy. how are you going to implement AI throughout your organization? Where are you trying to go? Are we trying to be known in the industry as the most innovative? Are we trying to have high quality and be responsible, or a mixture of both? You want to have that strategy, and kind of phases, and be involved in that strategy too. You can also do an AI risk assessment. Nick, you mentioned Ethico has that tool. Whatever tool you're using, do assessments on the risk in your company, in your subsection of healthcare, or whatever industry you're in. Also, you want to monitor the AI regulatory landscape, especially if you're global. Guess what? It's starting to emerge into such a diverse field of laws out there, especially with the EU, also with China and the US and everybody else in between. And so, you really want to keep paying attention to the regulatory landscape. That's, I would say, number one. Step two would be make sure you have the buy-in from the top, leadership tone. That sets the tone for everybody on how, quickly they move with AI, making sure the compliance is involved, making sure they're going through the governance mechanisms that your organization has, and then also board reporting. This is a board level issue, a board level risk. Make sure it gets all the way to the top and demonstrate what you're doing. And that could include, developing different types of things that I'm going to get into, such as step number 3, defining and establishing controls. So, from AI literacy, develop your AI policy, train on basic AI, train on intermediate and advanced AI, like prompting. How do you create your own AI agents inside your organization? Those sorts of things. And are you going to implement some AI, risk frameworks, say like the NIST framework, that has a lot of different great ways to manage your risk inside your organization. Then number 4, you go to assess and remediate. And this is, implementing data governance, making sure you have human oversight, you have testing protocols, whether it's in the sandbox before you implement and launch. You have auditing, you have monitoring. There's AI algorithm auditing nowadays. You also want to make sure you're using a safe and secure software development lifecycle to make sure that you have all these tools in place and cybersecurity, that you're doing these things responsibly. And then Nick and Scott, the last step, oversee. So yes, whether your organization, everybody can do it differently. So do you want to have an add-on to your compliance committee that's looking at AI governance? Do you want to have an AI governance committee or council that feeds up things into the compliance committee and up to the board? Or is it very much standalone? What's the purpose of it? Is it a review use cases and guide, or is it a stopgate where it has to have approval before you implement a new vendor with AI capabilities? You want to appoint your chief AI officer. You also want to have someone that's more of an AI governance type person, which could be your compliance officer. And when you implement these steps all together, you start to have a very robust AI governance framework that actually helps your organization move faster and innovate responsibly. And it can also turn this into a trust building activity and competitive advantage for your organization and your industry.
I love it. Run through those 5 briefly again, please.
Number
Say all
1,
that again. I'm just kidding. No, just the 5.
Number 1, identify. Number 2, buy-in from the top. Number 3, define and establish controls. Number 4, assess and remediate. Number 5, oversee.
So what I love about this framework is it's coming from not some theory. It's coming from a guy who's building it out in real time. Who, you have a ton of experience in this space, with AI specifically, and also in healthcare in general. So I love that about it. And what I also love about it is it's so accessible, right? I mean, these are all words we know, okay? These are all things that we do. It's reconfigured a little bit and it's applied to this new technology, this new risk area. But again, I just keep coming back to, this is just a new risk area. This is just a new tool. This is nothing to get paralyzed by, like deer in the headlights. And this is definitely not something ostrich in the sand, putting our head in the sand, that, this is a massive opportunity for us. There's always opportunity and change. And of course there's risks and change, there's risks and volatility and so forth, but there's also a ton of opportunity in it. And when we feel like we don't have the resources we need, or people don't see the value of compliance, or we have this old sort of brand that we're trying to sort of shake loose, now is the time to do it. And when you can come with a framework like this, that's again, very accessible, very implementable. I've used that word twice now, very implementable. It can do a lot to, fix those problems. What would you add to this framework there, Scott?
Yeah, I think the framework's great. I think the other nice thing to remember about it is it looked very much like all the other compliance programs we do.
Exactly.
It's
better put.
It's tone from the top. It's our core skill set. It's why we are so good to be a part of this effort. The one things that are specific or unique to AI is understanding the particular controls and mitigation steps you would take. And I would point people, if they've got a lot of time in their hands, to go through MIT's AI Risk. I'll drop a link in the chat. But it really, 1,600 plus risks that are AI specific, not healthcare specific, that you can go through and pick and choose like with everything else. But fundamentally, the core skills, we've got them. Don't freak out. We can do this. We know it. Understand how it's being used. Understand where it's being used. Don't avoid it, and be intentional and multi-stakeholder about it. Build that structure.
All right. Let's get one more massive emoji explosion. See, this is why you love the Ethics Verse, because we come with some actual content that you can actually do something with. Nakas, Scott, phenomenal session. Really, I learned a lot. Be looking for me to steal a lot of the smart things you guys said. You'll see on future episodes me stealing your exact words. So thank you so much for giving me so much fodder to sound smarter. Fodder to sound smarter, if I work on my Boston accent there. This Thursday, we have Emotional Intelligent ENC, where we're going to be talking about the missing link in organizational change with the one and only Evie and Julius Gase. And next Thursday, August 14th, from DEI to AI, executive orders and 2025 enforcement priorities with Alyssa. So a bunch of great new sessions coming up. Hope you guys come. Hope you enjoyed this session. Please like and share on social your biggest takeaways, and we'll see you next Thursday.